Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here at our very first Decisive. I'm Patrick Perrier, VP Product at Wiiisdom, based out of London in the United Kingdom. And my session today is about analytics data journey and its importance in the true last mile of the data journey. When I started working in the BI industry back in the year 2000, we were at a point where building reports against databases, not always a data warehouse, was already a thing. The really grumpy database guy, if you remember him, had full control over the servers and its data. And that same DBA guy was also probably in charge of the reporting capability. The idea was to make data available through meaningful reports to make decisions. Nothing new here. But making sure these reports were correct was important, of course, and validating the data and the quality of it wasn't right there at the data source. The assumption was that if the data is right at the source, it had to be right in the reports. In these early days, with the BI software that we had, it was fair. As BI tools were quite complicated back then for everyday users to create their own stuff, explore, and so on, the entire process was often a corporate IT thing, all very centralized, therefore easier to govern. I remember working at Business Objects when they released their first interface using a web browser as opposed to a desktop tool. And they called it self-service BI back then. It just meant to come and grab your already pre-built and probably refreshed report with your web browser instead of an Excel or PDF you receive by email. 20 years later, a lot of things have changed. BI is now analytics. There is an analytics data layer, which wasn't there before, and the term self-service has changed a lot. But we'll come back to that later. Now, these days, and after many years of consultancy, I'm VP of Product working on our analytics ops solutions called Wiiisdom Ops. What we do is to ensure you have confidence in every decision you make with your analytics. And one way to achieve that is by validating your analytics data. Not the data at the source, but the data you actually use to make your decisions on in the analytics solution. Hence, we like to call that analytics data quality. And that's because today we are in a real self-service world. The DBA team is not always involved. Anybody can easily connect to all sorts of data sources, create and share analytics without going through the necessary process of governance. But this session is not about our software. It's about the true last mile of the data journey. So I have a bit of a matrix theme for today. Thanks to my daughter, Julie, I'm a big fan of memes, and I ended up finding this one somehow. It kind of works for me, for us, because we like to say that nobody makes decisions based on data sets. And I'm sure you agree. It doesn't matter if the data is right at the source. It's important, of course, but it has to be right when it's time to take your insights from. And this is for us what the true last mile of the data is, the actual data used to make decisions, which will be very different to its original form and location. Let's have a look at these two personas trying to read data. You have Neo, he's a chosen one. He can read the matrix and act on information he receives, like escaping Agent Smith. But then there's the rest of the world, you and I, who took the blue pill. Sadly, it means that we have to make decisions based on visuals, not the matrix, like boring people. If everybody had to make decisions based on data sets, we would end up in a situation like this one. The very few, like Neo, will hopefully see the pattern in the data, find what you're looking for, the agents, and make some decisions, like using the kill switch. And us, not able to, or with much difficulty, make proper decisions. Not because the matrix is wrong necessarily, but because it will be very slow and hard to do. Here's a potential real-life example. You work at Netflix, and you want to understand the usage of the platform when people log on. What do they do next? Do they know already what they want to watch? Do they browse a bit? Do they use the recommendations? If you're anything like me, you browse a lot. But what's the easiest to achieve this analytics? You could look at the raw data, like in this table, one row at a time. Maybe you're using some sort of filters and formulas and sorting and so on. Or you could have a simple viz where you can see the answer in just a second. Of course, using a viz is the best method. But the truth is, when you look at this chart here, at this pie chart, you don't see the data that was used to generate this chart. You don't know if any rules were applied, if there's any filters or calculations. You don't know what the formulas would be. So you must trust what you've been provided and hoping you receive the real deal. And trust is what I want to talk about next. You may have seen this study already, but according to KPMG, and we have received similar feedback from our own surveys over the years, there's a very high proportion of analytics users that do not trust the data upon which they base their decisions on. Would you agree with that? Is that something you feel happening with you as well? Now, why is that? Why do we have a trust issue? Is it because one day we made a wrong decision based on bad analytics? Maybe it's because we know how these analytics are built, so we know how easy it is to make a mistake. And maybe it's just the lack of information about what we're looking at. Now, I understand after spending millions or even billions, you'd like to think that the data and your analytics will always be right. But maybe we need to think again. It is estimated that on average, organizations have 5 analytics platforms. It's not possible or even reasonable to expect that everything would be right all the time without some automated processes. Organizations today spend a lot of time and money on the data layer, the bit on the left here. And it's great, and the market is full of solutions to help you achieve this. There are data management solutions, data quality, governance, metadata management, lineage, impact analysis, and so on and so on. Plenty of things here to help the IT team and the data team. But what about solutions to help the data consumers, the ones actually consuming that analytics and making decisions? The issue of data quality has evolved. It's not just the data in the database, but like I said previously, the data in the analytics where you make your decisions. In the next slide, I'll show you exactly what that data journey is all about. So on the left, you have the data as you would see it before in your traditional ETL or ELT. The data moves from transactional databases, flat files, and so on, and will go perhaps in your data lake or in the data warehouse or data mart or something like this, right? So data where you have validated the quality and some business rules and so on. It's been cleaned and processed and so on, the traditional type of things. But today, with modern analytics tools like Tableau, Power BI, and others, you just don't connect to the data. You can, but the reality is the end user can and probably will prepare its own data, merge it with other sources that they've located themselves, Excel spreadsheets or content from some websites. And then they'll apply their own business rules, their own filters, do their own calculations. And Tableau Prep is a good example of self-service data preparation tool that can be used by users. Once the data has been prepared, then we will connect to that data via something called a data set or a data source. Now, again, it's another layer where end users have the ability to connect to more data, to hide some columns, to rename or filter, to make some sort of further transformations. You can even code your own things as well. And all of these things, we have not even created a bar chart yet. Now, I'm sure you see the pattern. The data moves through many layers, data lakes, warehouse, done by the IT team, probably. Then you have the end business users who can further prepare the data, then do it a bit more in the data set. And all of these different steps done by different people with different skill set that do not necessarily communicate, that causes a trust issue and for sometimes a quality issue as well. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. The end user in the far right of this slide here is consuming an analytics, and let's say it's the European sales report. How does that person know that the European sales report is looking at is literally the real 27 EU countries and not including UK anymore since Brexit? That could be a real difference. If a lot of the sales are done in the UK, the number would obviously be wrong. Another example is, how do you know that the calculations you're looking at are correct? You see a total, a margin, or something like this. How do you know that the report developer did not make a mistake and did additional calculations on data, on measures that was already aggregated? That would be wrong, of course. And for me, that's why we have trust issue in analytics: the lack of information and the lack of testing. If we have a look at Tableau here again, so this is Tableau prep. As you can see, users have the ability to connect to different sources, merge the data, transform it, later on merge with other data, create some calculations and some aggregates, and so on. This is something users do if they want to, not necessarily an ETL person. Once you have prepared your data, or you have sources, here we are at the data source level, or the data set as it's called with other tools. You see that here I have connected to MySQL database, Microsoft SQL Server, and an Excel spreadsheet. And these different sources are now joined together. But for those of you who have done this before, a left join, a right join, outer join, all that can have significant impact on the data. Are we sure the person creating the reports is doing the right thing? And then we're inside Tableau desktop here, where I can create sets, parameters, filters, calculations, and so on and so on. And all of these things, as mentioned before, are a potential risk of going wrong and what is probably causing the trust issues. And at the end, you have the report which you make your decisions on. And that data, that 713 incidents and these 350 problems is what the last mile of the data journey is, the one you make your decisions. Now, here's another example, this time with Power BI. I found this page on LinkedIn the other day, but you can see that it is the same concept. Even before you can think of analyzing your data, you need to prepare it, model it, do the visualization, so then you can do your analysis. Again, a lot of transformation. And what's the validation process behind all of these different things? And this is for us what the solution is, to create a trusted data journey. And we call that analytics ops. Basically reusing concepts of the DevOps world, the data ops world, and applied it to the analytics. Prepare your data and you test it. Once you deliver, you want to monitor and test again. And doing this in this infinite loop means that you can be more agile, deliver value more quickly, and in a trusted way. And in turn, it boosts the user adoptions of all these platforms that you've paid for. And there's a lot of benefits, obviously, before and after. Faster time to market, If you're using solutions, you can automate all of this testing and deployment. This will increase the governance, the process, and all of this can be audited as well. Collaborate more between all the parties, the IT people, the developers, the COE, the end users, and all this on a scalable infrastructure will mean that everything is performing as you would expect. If you want to know more about analytics ops and analytics quality assurance, please visit our website where we have a couple of blogs and white papers where we give you more information about all this. So my conclusion to give trust to the end users. Of course, continue validating your data sources at the source, as I'm sure you're doing already. But make sure you apply the same governance at your analytics, at all of these different layers, analytics prep, data sources, or the data sets, but also the reports and the dashboards. Make sure that you have the right filters being applied and the right parameters, and that your formulas always return the information that you're expecting. But more than that, start testing the data inside of the analytics. That's where decisions are made. And a piece of advice, don't only test when developing or changing content. Make sure you test all the time. That way you can identify problems before the end users, but problems coming maybe from outside your analytics platform. You could have an ETL failing somewhere, or maybe have row-level security not working the way you expect because of something happening in the security system, like Active Directory, for instance. Maybe there's something wrong with the server if you're using an on-premise technology. So testing often, finding problems before the end users. Well, I hope this session was useful, or at least brought some awareness of the complete data journey and where it fits in the very last mile of the analytics. Thank you once again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Decisive.